What's going on, guys? Coach Gaglione here. This is another edition of the Powerlifting with the People podcast. I'm your host, Coach Gaglione. We have Elise on the line today. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Excellent. So I know you just competed recently, which I want to kind of get into, but for those that it's their first time kind of listening to you, just a little bit background, who you are, where you're from, and then what you got going on right now.
Yep. So my name is Elise Frazier. I've been powerlifting since 2018. Um, I own my own gym, Invictus Barbell Club on Cape Cod in Massachusetts. So we've been open at this location for a few years, but prior to that, we had a smaller garage bay style gym that I opened over the pandemic. Previous to that, just worked commercial gyms, stuff like all the things that I never want to go back to. But ideally, I've been powerlifting since about 2018, but previous to that, and then for a small portion in the middle of my powerlifting career, I did bodybuilding. Uh, I've been coaching clients everywhere from commercial gyms to the powerlifting, like more of the elite level. And I love it. So I love my job.
And then what kind of came first in terms of like, I guess when you, I guess, started competing, or I guess sounds like you were kind of like into fitness, maybe prior. So what was kind of, I guess, like your start, I guess, into just like lifting in general? And then like at what point, like I guess I'm just kind of curious as far as your trajectory in terms of like working with people and then like how that coincided with your, kind of start of your, I guess, competitive career.
Yep. So about 2014, at the time I was out of college, working retail, didn't really have a huge plan. Was going to the gym just like very basic level, knew I needed to go to the gym, knew I needed to work out. And at the time, my dad was a personal trainer. He sort of kind of gave me the backup plan option. He's like, why don't you just take the personal trainer course, get certified, have something to fall back on. So looking back on that, I never imagined that I'd be where I'm at now. So I started with that, took the class. I remember I could barely do a push-up and thinking, I don't know how I'm supposed to do this as a career. So I just kind of took my time with it. I ended up opening a couple gyms. Like I would, for opening shift, I'd go, I'd be the 4:30 or 5 o'clock person, go in for a few hours, open, and then I'd turn around and go work my retail job for, 8 to 10 hours. That sort of just turned into, I think I wanted something more. So I basically just took my personal trainer experience with one client at a time, starting with people that just wanted to learn how to use machines, more of a commercial gym setting. And that steamrolled into teaching classes. I joke now that I don't know how I ever did it, but I had the energy to teach multiple classes every week, still work two jobs, and continue education. I was really big on just learning. I just wanted to know everything, and it was all very functional fitness, entry level, general population clients. And every once in a while, I'd get somebody that was super strong, and I was like, I need to know what to do with this.
Mm.
So a few years in, after bodybuilding, I was having trouble readjusting to food and training and how do I make them both work. So I was dating someone at the time and he was head to toe West Side Barbell sweatshirts. And I go, I don't know what this is. So I learned everything I could. Um, I did my first powerlifting meet. I did like a 12-week online prep. And I go, okay, this is pretty cool. Um, Ended up doing another one, took my hiatus to go back to bodybuilding and switched jobs. At that point, I had moved from a commercial gym to doing my own thing. And then pandemic hit and it's like, what do you do? So opening my gym over that time, I just realized so many people needed something to do. We needed something at any point to just have a goal. So I threw a mock meet at my old gym. I had like 15 people that half of them had never picked up a heavy weight in their life. We started powerlifting and then it just very much steamrolled from there. So that was like my real like entryway into coaching and competing sort of hand in hand.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I think it's just kind of funny like how sometimes you just kind of get exposed to something and you don't even know like this is going to be something that really becomes a foundation for, maybe long-term rest of your life, career, whatever it may be. I know like with myself, I kind of got started with training because I was really into like wrestling. That was like my sport, and my one of my middle school wrestling coaches was like a former powerlifter, so same kind of thing. Started to kind of just get introduced to like, Powerlifting USA magazines, the West Side Barbell. Like we had the VHS tapes at the time, and I kind of got really immersed into kind of training. And then kind of one thing led to another. But that was kind of like my first exposure to powerlifting. And then once kind of stopped wrestling, so I did my first meet in 2006, and kind of here we are. But just kind of funny sometimes people kind of come into your life, and you never know like what that could kind of lead to. So I
Oh
guess
yeah.
in terms of like having like the fitness background, and like I said, you were kind of, just kind of like maybe, I guess when you started to kind of like, I guess get immersed into more powerlifting, especially kind of, West Side Barbell, like, there was just like a certain time period, like I said, kind of like, I'd say, early 2000s upward to maybe like 2008, 2010. And then things kind of started to shift over, but there are like kind of pockets of like kind of, and you kind of mentioned like some in New, there's definitely pockets of equipped lifters in like the New England area, and then obviously Ohio, and there's pockets in like Florida, and there's some people in Jersey that I know of in terms. There's little kind of pockets of crews. Um, Going from like just more traditional, I guess, like you said, functional fitness, kind of general pop training to doing kind of more strength-based training. Obviously, like you had a little bit of a bodybuilding background, so you kind of had an understanding of maybe like what the accessory work would look like. What were some of those? I guess you said you did a 12-week program. So what was kind of like that initial program like in terms of how the training was structured, and if you can kind of remember like what it was like kind of just going through that first like initial prep. And I guess I'm assuming that you did that meet, raw, and like, and then we can kind of get into
Yep.
maybe like the differences and like kind of how you're training now and maybe how you've
Super
adapted.
raw. My first meet ever was 2018 Winter's Wrath RPS with Jamie Matta. Which looking back on that now, it's wild to see that uh, he's a coach that I stand by in many meets. He's taught me a hell of a lot. Um, Going back to that, I remember I weighed in. I had no idea. Like I missed almost all my squat commands. I'm looking back on it. I'm almost positive I was gifted my last squat because I know I moved my feet. And it's crazy to look back on that, thinking that, how could I miss a squat command? And that 12-week prep was literally just, I had never picked up a barbell in the thoughts that I would do only one. How do you do one rep? So I remember just training in waves of tens and eights and fives and threes, and then just figuring out my one rep. And it's just like looking back on it, it's just really wild because I thought those numbers were so cool at that point, being like a starting powerlifter.
Yeah.
And then I did my second meet, which was, I believe, a US APL, and that was completely different.
Yeah.
I had went from using a monolift and using all like the classic RPS, like we tend to use the same equipment, and then I did USAPL 2 hour weigh-in, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Um,
So it's,
I remember I paused my third squat. My third attempt was a pause squat. I still got it. And I just didn't know. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I just knew that I wanted more. Um, so I did start raw. My first
and
half
then
a dozen meets were all
I was
raw.
just kind of curious, just pause for a second. So like in
Yeah,
terms of like the training itself, did you have like kind of training partners yet, or were you kind of just
nope,
someone you were just kind of, was anyone,
totally on my own.
you were kind of, so okay, I was just kind of curious with how that kind of, so I guess so you said you did a few more meets kind of raw. So I guess because I know it sounded like you were kind of at least exposed or like aware of equipped lifting, and then you probably saw it because I know like for those that are listening and maybe they're newer listeners. So Jamie Mata runs a lot of the RPS meets in New England. He's been starting to run the nationals as well. Really big bencher. He's got a lot of great equipped lifters that he kind of works with in Vermont. So I guess what made you, I guess, decide? So you started to kind of, do a few more meets. Kind of sounds like you got bit by the bug, um, so to speak. When did you like say, I want to maybe switch up? I want to try competing in a different way, or I want to add reps. I want to, so what
It
kind of,
all started with wraps. So it was a meet in which I was very ill prepared. I was lifting raw long enough that I didn't really want to do a huge prep. I wasn't really expecting to compete. I had one of the girls at my gym that wanted to do a meet. She didn't want to do it alone. So I signed up. So I did it with her. And I remember that was the day that I decided on meet day that wraps would be a good choice. So looking back on that, now we have an official rule in our gym that you don't try new things on meet day.
good rule?
Um, so that didn't work out very well. I got completely folded like a lawn chair on, I believe, my second or third squat. And just knowing that like wraps could be an option, I left that meet in the next week in the gym. I tried what wraps were and I go, oh, okay, I get it. So wraps was kind of a journey that I did for like maybe a week or two. Then I went back to just figuring out like getting raw maxes, working off percentages. I did a lot of stuff on my own for like about 6 months, and then I ended up hiring another coach. And due to the feds that he wanted me to compete in, I did USPA, so it was sleeves. So I stuck with sleeves for another meet, another two meets actually, and then I started working at a different coach, and I said I want to do wraps. I don't know what we're gonna do, how we're gonna do it, but I think I'm gonna be a better squatter in wraps. So let's try. So just by squatting and wraps alone, I was like, oh, I have so much more capacity with squat. I love it. What can I do next? So that was also during a time frame in which I had torn my labrum in my hip, and I went from basically not squatting at all 7 weeks out from a meet to figuring out what I could triple 2 weeks prior to hitting an all-time PR at the meet after that. So after I rehabbed my hip, that was my last sleeved meet. And then I was like, I want to try wraps because I thought, maybe it's going to take some of the pressure off, or I'll still be able to squat heavy with this post injury, whatever. And then re injury comes down to let's try equip lifting. So I was put in a pair of briefs. My first time I was in a pair of briefs, I squat 405 to a high box. And my current PR previous to that was like 290. So I was like, okay, I think maybe I'll give this a try. So that was really what did it, was just being like, how am I possibly handling more weight? And I felt no pain,
Yeah.
and I just felt like the power. And it all started with squats. The whole learning a bench shirt and then figuring out deadlifts was like the least of my concern once you put me in briefs. So that's also been fun. But
So I guess so at that time, like, did you have like access? Did someone like here try this, or like what it was that like as far as like just
yeah, I have a group of powerlifters that I know just throughout New England. I was lucky to be able to access things that happen to be very close to my size. Um, Luckily, as a 198 female, I fit into a lot of 220 and 242 men's gear. So that was pretty easy to obtain some equipment to try. So yeah, it all started with the briefs. And then I went on to do one last raw meet after I first put those briefs on. And after that, I said, I don't know what I need to do, but I need to figure it out. And it's still a figuring it out process now that I've been equipped for a little over 2 years. Um, but having access to things and the community of equipped lifters, I mean, powerlifting is a community in its own, but because equipped is so much smaller,
sure?
everybody wants to help you. And that I think is like what really just kind of I didn't have to spend a couple $100s on a brand new pair of anything because if you talk to enough people, somebody's got an old pair. Then you could sort of try it and see if those work. And if they don't work, then why don't they work? What might be the next step? And then it kind of allows you to learn without kind of try before you buy. So that really did it for me too, because I didn't have to waste hundreds of dollars on brand new equipment because I was able to find stuff between other people and the golden land of Facebook Marketplace. So that which we find so much stuff on now. So that's good.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's really true. Like I think that like in terms of like when I got into the sport in like the early 2000s, like kind of like, there was some raw meets that you could do. But for most federations, like it was kind of like more of a choice, if you just chose to like wear equipment or not, but everyone was kind of like lumped together. I know like even I think that APF even still has like some rules like where I think if you want like raw with wraps, they considered you like single ply and essentially if outside of kind of doing like a specialized like raw federation. I know you mentioned USAPL didn't even have like raw yet. It was still single ply like when I got started. And kind of like it was kind of just expected that you would just kind of get in gear at some point. And I remember getting thrown my first bench shirt to me and trying to figure that out and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, it's just kind of cool like where I think people are just excited to be like, hey, let me show you the ropes and stuff. So it's definitely something different. Because like I said, what I've kind of seen, uh, it's been cool to see like a lot of powerlifting meets kind of come on the scene. There's like meets every single weekend. It seems like there's a lot more opportunities, especially but that's primarily for raw. And I've kind of found that what's been really cool about the equipped lifting community is it does seem more of like kind of like I said a team environment or a community environment. People are like a little bit more um, accessible and kind of willing to help each other. And I think that's it's definitely one of the things that I like about. And because it is a little smaller and tight knit, like I said, there's usually like I said, even when we started speaking a little bit here and there, it's like okay, maybe we haven't met each other directly or had a face to face conversation, but it's like oh yeah, I know this person or
Yeah.
I'm friends with him, and it's just it's nice to kind of and everyone's kind of connected in some fashion. So you kind of got into you got into the squat briefs and then kind of, so I think that like the first thing I would just say for people, at a certain point, and how old are you now?
I just turned 36.
Yeah. So we're pretty close in age. I'm 38. So depending on like kind of when you kind of get started with this, everyone's going to come in with different mileage and different injuries and orthopedic stuff. Um, And it is what it is. Like the longer you kind of do this, whether you were like a former like kind of athlete or not, before kind of getting into powerlifting, you're going to kind of accumulate some wear and tear. So when you kind of put the briefs on, I guess for the first time, and I know what was it like? I guess handling, I guess like 100 pounds, like more than like your max, and like what was it like? Did you have like was it kind of scary, just kind of unracking it, or did you feel kind of comfortable with like whoever was like kind of helping you at the time, or like what was that
The
like?
people that were helping me at the time, definitely it's all about coaching and cueing. And you pretty quickly kind of get out of your head that things, I think from going from totally raw with sleeves to wraps, I mean, I put almost 100 pounds on my squat with wraps. So I don't think I was as nervous about a little bit more weight on the bar, knowing I had more equipment.
Sure.
So I don't think that was as nerve-wracking. Getting figuring out what worked for me was, I think, the hardest part. So I definitely retained that trauma from the hip injury. So I ended up doing my first meet was single ply briefs in a single ply suit in lifters.
Mm.
Wild. But I'm like, oh, all these girls do single ply with lifters all the time. It's different. So I tried that. Then I went flat-footed with multi-ply gear, and I didn't really PR much. I kind of went backwards. So I said, that's not right. We need to figure this out. So I actually ended up getting into a single ply suit, just a suit. I didn't even touch briefs. And I was hitting more consistently and felt stronger flat-footed in a single ply suit only than I was when I was in two-ply briefs, two-ply suit. So that sort of turned into how far can I push the single ply suit? So I was able to push that to I last time I squat in the single ply suit was this past March, and my top squat was 474. So that sort of told me like I had done the Arnold this past year, and then about 4 weeks later I did another meet in memory of a client and a friend that passed, and I only PR'd my squat by 4 pounds between those two meets, even though back to back's a little wild. And I said, okay, maybe I've tapped out of the single ply land and I need to get into multiply. So adding that extra layer also meant putting more weight on my back.
Right.
So that nerve-wracking part was probably the only time that I felt under the squat bar. Adding that weight was like, oh, okay, this is heavy. Okay, now it's heavy. Because in like the 400s, I got used to it, and I'm like, this is okay. And as soon as you start to get into the 500s and then having six on your back, you're like, oh, okay, this is a little scary. Um, but I mean, just squatting alone, a lot of that was trying to recover from the trauma of my hip, and learning from going from single ply being more of a normal stance to getting into multiply and actually widening my stance and squatting like a multiply lifter. Like equipped should be lifting, not just squatting in a single ply suit.
Yeah,
So that was different. The 100-pound difference between 5 and 6 is what really feels a little different on your back.
sure. So at this time, like I guess like at this point in, what has changed in terms of like how the training week looks like? You know, are you kind of do you have like a regular training partner? So what is like your typical, let's say, I don't know, because I know like off season and like and then getting ready for meet might be different, or like if you have like a little bit of a layover. But let's say that maybe like you're 12 weeks out or 8 weeks out from a meet. Like, what does like your typical like training week look like in terms of, what your workouts are, might consist of, and then like maybe are you getting more help on like certain days? Because obviously, squat and bench is a little bit more potentially complicated than maybe just,
Yes.
accessory work or deadlifts and stuff like that. So,
I basically went from I was the only equipped lifter at my own gym. So for the first year or so, I was traveling a lot, going to other gyms, working out with other crews because I was the only equipped lifter at my own gym. So I had to essentially coach my training partners on how to
mhm.
coach me as a lifter. So that was really interesting because I'm extremely fortunate to have the crew that I have. But basically within about a calendar year, I went from being the only multiply person, only equipped lifter in the whole gym, to basically nobody even barely trying a slingshot on for bench, to now we have about a half a dozen equipped lifters here, like within the matter of a year.
That's cool.
And that's so cool because I'm so lucky to have them. I've my essentially my training partner and my professional handler, Sarah, she has gone out of her way to learn everything she needs to learn, continues to learn, knows exactly how every single person needs their equipment. And having someone like that, like you can't put any, it's invaluable. Like she's someone that came from raw lifting, did one raw meet, and immediately was like, I'm doing equipped. And it was simply because we needed the people. We needed the people to be able to learn and have other people that were doing this and trying equipment and seeing how it feels in order for them to turn around and help me as their coach. So that's been actually something that I definitely don't think that you find many places, where my athletes were sort of put in a situation where they're my training partners, my athletes. They're put in a situation where they in turn they have to help me because I'm the one that needs the help. So especially for squat and bench. So having them learn too has been big. The prep alone, we squat in groups. So it's typically now we squat on Saturdays. It's open for everyone. So we have raw lifters, equipped lifters on Saturdays. We can usually throw somebody new in a pair of briefs here and there, which is always fun. And then bench, same thing. We typically have roughly like the same crew of people. You need a couple people to help you for bench. Um, and I've tried a couple different kinds of shirts, but I've pretty much settled on my one poly shirt that I have. And then I started dabbling a little bit with a unlimited shirt, a single ply band shirt. So again, those work totally different. Um, and then deadlifts has kind of just been based on free will and luck at this point. So learning how to deadlift sumo from being a conventional lifter.
Mhm.
You don't need much help as far as putting your suits on and stuff like that, but um, the training, like the just learning how to train a totally different lift and make it equipped, that was probably a bigger challenge than squat and bench at that point.
Cool. And then yeah, I think it's if there's any kind of I guess coaches kind of listening to this, I think it's a good like good thing to reiterate. Like, if you are a really good coach, you could also, like you said, you can kind of teach your other crew members or team members to know like what to look for as well. And I think that's like again something that's um not overlooked, but you don't see that as often like with, a lot of raw lifters now. Sometimes you may have some training partners here and there. You may have some people that kind of train together. But a lot of times like a lot of people are on from what I've seen, over the last like probably like 5 to 7 years or so. A lot of people are kind of on their own program, and a lot of these other kind of bigger gyms that again have like more, either whether it be power racks or combo racks. A lot of times people will have their headphones on, they'll be kind of, doing their own thing, and they may call some people over for like a spot. But a lot of times if there's like 10 racks, there'll be like one person on each rack and like that's it. And if you've ever been to like an equipped lifting kind of, crew type environment, that might be anywhere from could be like 3 to 6 people. Sometimes it could be like 10 people on a single monolith, and everyone's kind of rotating through. All right, when you're not going, I'm watching your depth. I'm going to wrap your knees. I'm going to kind of, give you the
Yep,
cues that you need. And I think there's something nice about not that like you like need each other, but it does really kind of enhance the overall training experience that everyone's kind of working together like a well-oiled machine. And that's something that, again, most of the people that I work with raw are raw, but I still try to kind of instill that same type of kind of environment. And I think that's something that I think that a lot of people could benefit from is just learning to work as one unit, learning to kind of work together. And then kind of again, when it's your turn, you're kind of receiving that feedback and you're getting that cueing, you're getting eyes on you. It's not
yep,
just encouragement, like you said, it's technical things that, we're kind of like looking to reinforce. And
definitely.
and then when you're kind of after you're set, then you're switching from, athlete to coach, your
Yep.
coach hat on, and that could be definitely challenging if you're kind of like the quote unquote like leader of the group. I just had my buddy Chris on, and we were kind of talking about this too, and it's just something, it takes a little bit more. You have to be able to like learn to switch gears like quickly if you're kind of the person that's kind of in charge or whatever. If you're kind of the gym owner, so. But yeah, no, I appreciate you kind of, telling all that. So I do want to kind of recap your last meet a little bit and maybe some things moving forward, maybe some advice to new lifters. But I do want to also kind of touch on kind of like the gym owner, business owner kind of aspect of things and how, because this is something I think that again, a lot of people that are kind of getting into this, a lot of people like that are kind of doing this as a profession. A lot of people may just elect to just do like online coaching and stuff like that, and I think that's great. But again, one of the things that I'm always like kind of parsing with myself because I have two locations, which is it's been a challenge. But one of the reasons why I keep the original location in New York open, and I've been working really hard for that, is that we have such a great community kind of built there already. And now I'm trying to do the same thing kind of here in Delaware. And to your point, I'm starting to get some equipped lifters kind of come our way too. We just had a guy that's getting close to like a 700-pound bench press, which has been fun for me to kind of help him out. He comes from like a strongman background, but so as like a business owner, I guess what are some things that I guess how do you try to like kind of balance your own kind of goals as an athlete, your own goals as and also like I don't know if you kind of view it this way or not, but one of the things that like we have like the team, we have the team, you have yourself as an athlete, you have your kind of your kind of core crew members, and then you have like the physical like entity of the business, and you have to like keep the lights on, you have to have money coming in.
Yeah.
So, um, And like we did mention before, it is, especially for equipped lifting, in such a small kind of community. And so maybe like, like you said, those six, whatever, 6 to 10 equipped lifters, they're not necessarily maybe paying the bills, right? So how do you kind of balance,
Right.
I guess, are there other things that you kind of do in terms of your own business that are maybe be generating more funds so you can kind of keep the lights on, so things. So like, I'm just kind of curious, like how your gym kind of operates, and if there's any maybe like things that you've tried to kind of figure out like over the years to kind of for yourself.
Yeah, I'd say biggest thing is although powerlifting is where my passion is, the money really isn't in that particular market. Because although I have a majority of my clients are in person, I'd say maybe about 20% of my clients are online that still have access to the gym. And then there's about 10% that are just online that aren't anywhere near here, whatever. So, that 20% that has access to the gym, but maybe they don't live quite so close, so they go to a different gym for a majority of their lifts, but they have access to be able to come in and lift with me. Those people are, they update it every Sunday. They send me their updates. I make sure I'm at their meets, stuff like that, which don't get treated any different than the people that are in the gym. But the people in the gym, my favorite thing just to say it is my goal is to make people strong for whatever that looks like for them. It doesn't have to be powerlifting.
Yep.
They don't even have to ever touch a barbell. But at the same time, it's not my fault if they see other people doing it and they say, hey, that looks cool.
Yeah.
And I want to try that. Because I have people from 6 years old, I have a 6-year-old girl to a 74-year-old female that are all using barbells. So there's when people say, "Oh, I don't know if I could," I said, "I have a 5 pound kitty bar. I will teach you how to use a 5 pound kitty bar and teach you how to squat if I have to." So it's really cool to see people that actually get really interested in powerlifting, squat, bench, deadlift, whatever it may be, or at least that style of training because they see other people around them and not everybody looks the same. So I think that's a very big part of it is people might come to me for regular strength training. Um, I do a lot of group coaching where I'm physically in the building from this hour to this hour. If you're coming in and I have to tell you what you're doing, that's one thing. And then I have people that are on programmings, that I make and I'm just here. So, I'm here to spot, I'm here to cue, I'm here to coach, I'm here to do all that. So there's a couple different levels to it because we are a private facility. So we have key code access. So I have, people that come here for the summer for one day, for 2 months. Somehow in the mysterious land of Google, John Hack found my gym. So he was here a few months ago. So that's pretty cool. So like it's kind of just like if you know, you know, and I don't spend a ton of money on marketing. But it's worked out really well that way. So there's a lot of other like more commercial based gyms in the area, and I have clients that do online coaching at all of them. So uh it's really just comes down to like I want to make people strong. So if for them it's lifting once a week, twice a week, and then we focus on their other health initiative, that's great. But I mean, end of the day, it's all about making people healthy. That's your job, that's my job, and it can look different. So,
I think that's great. And I do want to highlight, I think, because that's something I've been kind of, since I've moved to Delaware and kind of opened up the second location, which is kind of like almost like a pseudo like home gym slash I train some people. But I think kind of like more and more people I've seen leaning towards kind of like this hybrid model where there's some combination of online and in person. And I do think with people's kind of crazy schedules and stuff, maybe you can't see someone like 4 times a week, especially if you're doing like personal training, like, that could be very costly. But this is your program. We're going to kind of teach you how to do it. And I do think there's something about having that face-to-face interaction. And again, if you want to be a competitive lifter, if you're able to kind of get like some of that team training in and like kind of those, really kind of that group atmosphere where you're kind of getting the combination of being like kind of coach and athlete and kind of helping each other. And I think that's super valuable. And again, I think for like the young, what I see a lot of the younger lifters that are kind of getting in, they're not kind of being exposed to that. And one of the things that I've kind of noticed too is that you kind of mentioned the 6-year-old. Um, if this is like their first venture in athletics and they don't really, if they've never been like on a team before, unless someone like yourself or someone like myself, which if that's kind of not fostered or instilled in them, like, hey, like our daughter, she just turned 10. She's done some meets and stuff and she's doing well and she enjoys it. But like even like for her, like, hey, like when you're not going, you're gonna spot your sister or you're gonna help load her weights or just like little things like that. It's like it's just I think if you're kind of working with younger people, it kind of goes a long way where it's like it's not just like about the gym, like you said, it's about, kind of creating healthy habits. And again, like anything else, you can take it too far, of course. I certainly have in my, youth, but yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think that it's good to like one of the things that I try to like kind of do with myself is kind of balance like, okay, this is like sometimes separating a little bit like what the business is doing and what the business needs to do to kind of advance. And then also, okay, like what's going to be kind of best for the team, what's going to be best for, what are we kind of doing as an organization to kind of support like the athletes and the community and host events and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of fast forward a little bit and maybe just kind of recap a little bit how your last meet went and maybe some goals moving forward, and then maybe any, I guess, advice you can kind of give people. I'll kind of remind you that because I know there's a lot of questions, so we can kind of recap your last meet and then maybe like offer some advice to kind of people starting out. So
Yeah. So I just competed this past weekend at Strength of Heroes 5. It's a IPA meet hosted by Shauna Mendelson, out in New York. It was my first pro invite, so it was of course I'm going to be there. So it was a pretty big deal to me. So my parents came out to see me the first time they've ever seen me powerlift, other than Instagram. So that was quite eye-opening for them. It was a great weekend. Saw a couple people that I've only ever seen on Instagram. I was able to share the platform with some of the strongest women in the world, and men, but there's definitely a different feeling of being the little guy on the big guy day.
mhm.
So I was honestly just gunning to PR my total, which I was set up to do with my openers. So from let's see, in 2024, I did 3 equipped meets. Um, with all different, every one of those meets, the only thing that was the same was my bench shirt. Um, and then this year I did back-to-back meets. I did the Arnold at the beginning of March. And then I did another meet at the end of March. Like I said, that was for one of my friends and clients that passed. They did that in memory of him. So I just did a quick turnaround, did that, took some time off to dial it in for September. So my real big goal was to learn how to squat multiplay because I was coming from single play. So I opened with like a 56-pound PR on my squat just because I was in different gear. So that was exciting. And then bench is my favorite. It's not my favorite during prep, but it's my favorite on meet day. So bench went very well. I went 3 for 3 on bench, still hit a 20-pound PR. And then deadlifts, I about 3 weeks out switched back from sumo to conventional. So I hadn't max effort my conventional in almost a year, and I was able to still pull a PR. So that was pretty exciting.
You're still like in like a suit for that, or did you go raw?
Yeah, I bought a squat suit, a 2-ply Inzer squat suit off of Marketplace. I trained in it twice and kind of sent it on meet day. But realistically, I just needed something to kind of help me from being gassed out from squats and bench.
Sure.
Um, and with lifting conventional in the suit, it's really just about straps and making sure that you can reach the bar. So
It's
that
tricky.
was exciting though. So yeah, it was it was a good turnout. I can't complain. I PR'd all my lifts, but happy but definitely not satisfied. So there's definitely more in there. Came away from the meet with just what can I do now? I am signed up for a meet that's it's a women's only meet, which is pretty awesome. All the proceeds of that are going directly back to the women's community, which is amazing. And I signed up for that for my first unlimited bench only meet.
Nice.
So it'll be my first bench only, which honestly the lack of pressure is amazing because it's like I just have to bench. I don't have to squat first. I'm really psyched about that. So that's gonna be fun. I've enjoyed being in the band shirt, but that's a whole different story with holding on to weight. It's one thing to put something on your back. It's a totally different story to be
Over your.
doubling your weight in your hands above your face.
Yep.
So, so that's exciting. I'm pretty amped about that.
Yeah, I think the single lift stuff is another thing I kind of advocate for. I think especially whether you're getting into equipment or not, but I think actually especially if you're getting into equipment, I think it's much more manageable to kind of like potentially slow down a little bit. Like you kind of mentioned that you just kind of got in briefs initially, and it's a process to try to like learn all three lifts, especially equipped, is very daunting. So that's definitely like an option. Is just learn one piece of equipment at a time, one lift at a time. There's nothing wrong with kind of just taking your time. And I think for me too, I think that was something that was kind of interesting, and it's frustrating but enjoyable. And like I said, you have to kind of try it to see like as far as like the learning of like how to use the equipment, the trial and error of like you kind of mentioned that. Okay, I tried like two plies, then I went back to single ply. Like sometimes less is more. And you don't necessarily have to get the tightest stuff initially. But with that being said, so I want to kind of like give some advice to like newer lifters, but also like if you can kind of explain maybe for people that are unfamiliar, like as far as like maybe some differences in like how your approach is to the equipped lifting, and maybe just like what does it feel like? Like what would you kind of describe like the differences for someone that's like never tried it before, or maybe they're kind of intrigued, but maybe they're like a little bit on the fence if it's going to be something that they want to dabble in.
Yeah. Um, right off the bat, best advice for new lifters is just sign up for the meet. Look through the rule book, talk to people, expect that I would say, 90% of the time you're going to go to a meet and there's going to be somebody there that's going to be able to kind of help guide you a little bit. Um, and ask questions. But we host in June and January, we host push pulls here. We do RPS. It's very easy. It's just bench and deadlift. It's been the easiest way to get new lifters to even try powerlifting. Some people I did 8 week prep, 10 week prep. It kind of depends on what their schedules were like. But people that never in a million years thought that they'd put on a singlet and perform in front of people. And sometimes it just takes, okay, you like benching, do bench only. You love deadlifting, do deadlift only. It's also a great entry. Push pulls are a great entry for anybody just to say, get 2 out of the 3 down, like you said, kind of learning each lift, and then, sign up for a pull power later, whatever it happens to be. So that's my best advice for new lifters is just be patient, sign up for the meet, and go in with no expectation. Just go have fun. So our biggest thing that we say here is we're just lifting with friends. So I mean, I'm at a pro level meet this past weekend, and the only thing I could think of is it's just another day. You're lifting with friends, even if you don't really know them. You're lifting with friends. Everybody's there to lift. They're there for the same reason. We all want to do well. Um, but that and then usually the bigger guy at the meet is usually the nicer one. So I always go up to the big guy at the meet. Or girl. Always a big girl, somebody like that. But I mean that's like my best advice because I think it's so unnecessary the expectation that gets put on to be on social media and see someone that wants to sign up for a meet and then immediately qualify for a national level meet. and that's their goal instead of just showing up and getting experience. So I think just the experience and anything can happen on meet day. That's for sure.
Yeah, I
Um,
like the lifting with friends
but and
for sure.
yeah, that's all it is. We're only about half serious around here. Like I have been to some gyms that you walk in and you're like, I'm not so sure. This is like 100% serious in here right now. And like you can hear a pin drop if you shut down the music. And like you come into my place and I've got guys that are putting on Taylor Swift remixes and I've got girls that are talking about all sorts of crazy crap together. And, we all kind of just show up and lift. And then when it's like somebody yells sides, all right, everybody's on the mono. Everybody's serious. Everybody's focused for those 2 minutes or whatever. And like, I think that's how it should be. I mean, there's a certain level of seriousness that needs to come with being underweight and respecting the barbell. But I mean, realistically, like we all want to do well. And if there's the massive aggression and like the screaming and the yelling, that might work for some people, but that's not us, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think like kind of if you're lifting in a crew, if you could find a gym like yours, some of the facilities that we have, like something that kind of fosters more of a team environment, that kind of like attitude will kind of naturally kind of gravitate towards those types of communities. And yeah, you want to be serious enough to like obviously be safe, not hurt yourself, and you said respect the weight. I think that's a great way to think about it. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, make this like a healthy pastime with friends. You certainly can take it too far. You certainly can make it unhealthy if you're not careful. But I do think that that's where if you have good training partners, good people around you that are positive and supportive, they can kind of reel you back in if you're maybe like getting a little bit too crazy or too serious or too intense. And then if you're not pushing hard enough, they could also give you a little bit of a kick in the butt when you need it too. If you're maybe not kind of putting in as much effort as you should,
Yeah.
or just
I've
not.
been told that as a coach. I've been told that from my athletes as a coach, fine, don't be strong then. And it's like, okay, I guess I'll go up or and it's like, I don't know. It's a different feeling.
Yeah, and I think sometimes too, like if you it can be helpful when you have that like some that the training partners that you've been with for a while that you really trust to like because sometimes maybe your mind's elsewhere, something's going on in your personal life, and maybe you're just like, man, it's like things are your head's not in it, but it's like get your mind right. Let's focus on the day, and I think being able to also shut off and kind of leave that stuff at home, bring positive energy to the group, and that could also really change the whole like day around, and even potentially the trajectory. I know like for me, when my training is going well, I'm bringing a positive attitude to the gym. Oftentimes that's going to follow suit in like other areas of your life, and I think can really have compounding effects with everything that you do. But I appreciate you kind of coming on the podcast today and kind of telling us your experiences. Where can people find you if they want to find more about your gym and then what you're doing as an athlete as well?
So I'm a big Instagram girl. So it's EliseFrazier.coach is my Instagram handle. And then the gym is Invictus Barbell Club. And we're on Cape Cod. So when everybody's on vacation, they can come down here. And we're the only powerlifting gym on Cape. We're the only place that has monoliths, calibrated plates, competition bars, everything like that. So
And then you said, what are when do you guys host meets again? I just wanted to,
So we do push pulls. We do blood in the water. Of course, we have to have a shark theme. We're
sure.
living on Cape, so we do blood in the water. It's a RPS push pull in June, and then we will be doing Dead of Winter in January again.
All right, awesome. We'll definitely give Elise a follow. Definitely check out Invictus Barbell if you're in the area. Thank you guys so much for watching, guys. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Please share it. It helps other people find us. Until next time, stay strong, and we'll see you soon. All right.